Hi everyone. I have not made a video for this channel for a long time. Apologies for that. I did take a break over the summer and I wanted to start in September, but with the press and push of a new semester, I was not able to. I got a comment from someone, I don't remember who, about doing the servant songs in Hebrew, so I'd like to start that this week, and I'll try to be doing one video a week or so, working through chapters Isaiah 42, 49, and 53. Let's do, let's just start with verse 1 and see how far we get here. Let me read it in the Hebrew, and then I will pause, and you can work on it on your own. So, verse 1. Hein avdi et makbo, bechiri ratzata nafshi, natati ruchi alive, mishpat lagoyim yotzi. Lo yitzak, velo yisa, velo yishmiya bachutz kolo, kana ratzutz lo yishbor, upishta keha lo yakabena, leemet yotzi mishpat, lo yekhe velo yarutz, ad yasim be'eretz mishpat, ule torato, iyim yechelelu. Okay, go ahead, pause the video, pronounce everything out loud, and see how much you can translate. Okay, to begin with verse 1, hein is an alternate form of hine, to behold. So it just means behold. And avdi is my servant. So we get the servant talked about here, obviously. Tamak means to grasp. It's used in Genesis for grasping your father's hand. You can grasp wisdom or riches in Proverbs. And bo, him. So I've grasped him, I've gotten a hold of him, I'm holding on to him. He belongs to me. Bechir, from bachar, to choose, means my chosen one. And not only that, ratzah means to delight. This is a 3fs verb from ratzah. The hey is hardened to a tav because it's a 3fs cal perfect ending. So my chosen one, my soul delights. And in English, we of course would say, in whom my soul delights. So interestingly, we get my servant and then not his qualifications, but how God divinely empowers him and how God feels about him. God's got a hold of him, he's God's chosen one, and he is at a soul level delighted with his servant. Next, the servant's divine empowerment, natati, I have given, ruchi, my spirit, upon him. And then to the second clause, we see the result. Justice to the nations, yotzi, he will bring forth. And the verb here, of course, is yatzah. In the hiphil, you can see that because of the hierik yod here. And in the hiphil, this form of verb, when it adds a yod because of the imperfect, it will write the other yod as a vav. So that's a 3ms imperfect hiphil. And you'll remember that's the definite article there for lagoyim. So the spiritually empowered servant will bring forth to the Gentiles justice. That's a way of saying the servant is going to make the world right. After the cruel crushing of the Babylons of this world, the world is going to be a safe, holy, beautiful place. Okay, so we have God's delight in the servant here, spiritual empowerment and mission, and then the way the servant will go about this mission is talked about next. Lo yitzak, tzahak means to scream or cry out. Velo yisa, nasa, initial nun verb, means to lift up. And kol here is assumed, voice. So he won't cry out, he won't lift up his voice, in parentheses. And then a hiphil, 3ms imperfect, he will not cause to be heard, bachutz, outside his voice. So he won't make his voice heard in the street. He's not going to be an impressive, macho, chest-thumping, someone who cows and cowers people and overwhelms them with how impressive he is. Isn't it great that as God's servant, you don't have to be impressive? Isn't that nice? Verse 3, akana is a reed, and ratzatz means to crush. And you can see from the a-u form, it's a katul, cowl, passive participle. So a crushed reed, lo yishbor, he will not break. And a pishta is a flax or a candle wick, and keha is an adjective, and it means faint or flickering, something like that. I forget what the English has here, but a guttering wick. He will not, and the root here is kava, which means to quench. It's a PL verb because you have a vocal shava and a doubled middle root letter. The nun here is sometimes added with suffixes on imperfect verbs, so he won't quench it. So it's interesting. We get, let me change the colors. We get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 nots. The servant is defined by what he won't do. And if you know how grandiose and self-impressive Assyrian kings were and Babylonian kings, this would have just jumped off the page to you to hear this for the first time. Verse 3, Jesus will be utterly, well, I say Jesus because he's the ultimate servant. At this point in Isaiah, it's the nation of Israel as a whole that has been assigned to this servant role. The servant will be utterly, perfectly gentle and tender for people people who've been crushed by the world. Jesus won't crush them any further. Now, we get, as in verse 1, we get the same phrase here. He will bring forth justice. So justice is the opposite of crushing people, but Isaiah never repeats, he adds. So emet is a truth that means, it's a noun that means truth. And because Hebrew doesn't have very many adverbs, it uses nouns adverbially pretty frequently, and the lamed is a lamed of manner. It can be used for adverbs. So truthfully or faithfully, he will bring forth justice. Faithfully, and even what's more, he won't kahe, which means to be faint or something like that, and ratzatz is the root here, which means to be crushed. So he won't, it gets translated as he won't be faint or discouraged, but it means he absolutely will not give up ad until he places be'eretz in the earth justice. So 3 times we've had mishpat. Where was the first? Mishpat and mishpat, making the world right again. And earlier it was the goyim, now it's the eretz, which means the whole world. Until he is absolutely determined to do this, till he sets justice in the earth, and for his Torah, the iyim, which is the islands, and yachal as a verb means to wait. It's a PL plural verb. So we get islands and earth, and Torah and mishpat. So the second clause here helps to explain how mishpat comes about. Maybe not the only way, but it's through his teaching ministry that mishpat comes in the earth. Okay, that's the first definition of the servant's role, and in this part of Isaiah, it's the nation as a whole. So when we come back next week, we'll see how this is unfolded later in chapter 42. Thanks, everyone. Please feel free to add a comment.